McCampbell and welcome to my studio. Today we're going to take a small canvas and we're going to tint it a medium tone gray so that we can then paint a pear on it. So what we're working with today are some Fredrix Red Label canvases that are 9 by 12 inches, and they come already pre-gessoed like this. And what I'm going to do is take some golden acrylics. I'm going to take some heavy-bodied titanium white and some carbon black and mix it here on some palette paper, and then put this on the panel so it will have a medium tone. I'm going to begin with a palette knife, and I'm just going to take a small bit of black because you don't need that much, and I would say maybe 1/4 black to 3/4 white, something like that. Let me see how it looks. I'd rather have it too white than too black. Just see how it looks. Yeah, I need to add a little more black to that. Remember that when you are working with acrylics, they usually dry a little bit darker. So one way you can do it is just spread some paint with a palette knife. And then you can take a wide brush. These are Dynasty black gold brushes that are synthetic. They're wonderful and super smooth. I love how smooth they are. And just dip it in water and then spread your acrylics around. That's one way to do it. Or you can mix it all on your palette paper and not mix it on your canvas at all. I was just trying to do this as quickly as possible. So what is the reason for toning? Well, first of all, it's a little intimidating to look at a completely white canvas. It's just pretty stark. So it's nice to have that whiteness, pushed back to a medium toned gray, medium value. But also, when you are studying painting, it's really good to understand values from the lightest light to the darkest darks. And by toning, you already have this middle value already done for you. So it's really nice. It's already there. So when you're starting out with your painting, and we're going to be doing a pear, you can just focus on the very dark darks and the light lights, and the medium is already there for you. And it just makes it easier to learn to paint and use value, I think. And a lot of people tone different colors. It could be a salmon-y pink color, it could be yellow ochre, it could be a bluish gray, whatever you want to do. And that also can be, like, let's say you're going to paint a primarily green painting, maybe a landscape, and you might want to have a contrasting color there that's beneath it. You could paint an orangish or salmon color background and then paint your green, primarily green painting on top of it. And they because they're complementary colors, they play in a really interesting way with each other visually. So there's lots of reasons to do it, but that's what we're going to start with today. And I'm going to let this dry about 30 minutes under a fan. It should be good enough. And that's the beauty of acrylics. They dry fast. And while that's drying, though, I want to show you, you can take a picture of anything that you're working on and reduce it to primarily black and white. And then that way you can really see the values from dark to lightest light. Really helps you. I mean, you can see it with the color one if you have an eye for that. But sometimes I just think it's easier to see it if it's already put in black and white for you. Therefore, you can just really know where to begin with your darks and where to place your lights. Okay, so we'll begin in a few minutes. We are back and we have our panel nice and dried. I have a piece of vine charcoal here, which is wonderful. I want to show you something. When you draw with vine charcoal, you can put it on and just quickly wipe it off. It leaves nothing. Whereas if you put a pencil down, it can leave the mark and it's harder to get off. So I do suggest when you're blocking in, use a vine charcoal, willow charcoal, something that's light. And it doesn't matter if it mixes in with the paint, that's okay too. All right, so we have our black and white picture, And what we're going for today is to do a black and white and then toning it with some color. Real simple. And that way you're getting all your values with the black and the white, and then you're basically colorizing with color to get the final product. So what we're going to do here is I'm just going to focus on one pear. So I'm just going to draw this pear really quickly, block it in. And you could do all 3 pears. You could do this on a lot larger, piece of paper, canvas, cardboard. It's a free-for-all what you paint on, as long as you use gesso between your paint and the substrate to keep things archival. All right, so there's a basic pear. We'll go with that shape, okay? And I'm going to choose to have about 1/3 of the way down be the tabletop. That's the rule of thirds and odds. You want to keep things kind of in thirds. So there you go. And then I'll probably, if there's a focal point, we'll probably be about right there. Now speaking of that, we've got to look at the light source. It looks like the light is coming this way and hitting on the pear, and then it dramatically falls off on the other side with a touch of light bouncing off from other areas there. So that is what we're going to look at with our values. Now I have a Masterson palette here. I love these because the last time I used this was a week ago, and I opened it up, and because it has a moist sponge, the paints are still wet. So that's great. So I have my white titanium and my carbon black heavy body golden acrylic. And I've mixed a few piles. We have the dark, a medium, dark, just a few different, from black to white. We have some mixed areas with different values of white and gray. So that's easy to mix up. So just do several piles. Let me see, where can I put this? I'll put this right here. I have 2 bottles of water. One to have things a little on the cleaner side, and one for your dirty brushes. I also have some matte medium here, and this is a translucent gloss. Well, it's not too glossy because it's matte, but it acts as an extender to the paint. It also helps it dry a touch slower. If you get the glossy medium, it'll have more of a glossy glow to the acrylic. I like it because it just helps the acrylics go on a little thinner, smoother, maybe dry just a hair slower, so it gives you a little more working time. Now, the first thing when I paint is I want to get the largest brush I have. Again, these are the black gold. This is a size 12 by Dynasty, and it's nice and smooth. And I'm just going to start to block in a few shapes. I'm wanting this to be a pretty quick exercise, so I'm just going to go ahead and dip my brush in a little water, maybe dip it in a little matte medium, and we already have our medium value on the canvas, so I'm going to go for a darker black value and bring it down here. And it's pretty watery. I think I had too much water on my brush. That's okay, it'll dry pretty fast. And then I want to go ahead, and while I have some paint on my brush, and it's very thin, as you can see, very thin, I'm going to start blocking things in, like the shadows, maybe even come in with a little whiter white on this side. And I'm not worrying about the charcoal or too many details or anything like that. I'm just blocking in some values and tones, all in gray. Now I'm going to imagine that this area over here is whiter because I want to see some contrast. And just start blocking in ideas, even though that's not in the photo. Just creating my own world here. Now because this is moist, as you can see, when you come in with acrylic, you can set that brush down just for a minute, not long because you don't want it to dry, but you can take a dry brush and blend a little bit if you want to smooth out the transitions from light to dark. And that's also why it's good to have a little medium in there, a little gel medium or any kind of medium, because it helps you to be able to blend the colors a little bit. So see how that works? And I'm going to go ahead and get some very dark. See the dark underneath the pear? I'm going to go ahead and lay that in. And again, I can use this same brush, but I'm just going to wipe the paint off. Maybe clean it off a little bit. And you can smooth that edge out. And by the way, this brush is also Dynasty Black Gold. It's a number 6 flat or bright. And so you can get in here and while it's wet, you can still smear it around a little bit and create soft edges if you'd like. I like to move my brush around in different directions, kind of like that, to get different effects. Now, like I said, I'm trying to go pretty thin so this will dry fast and then we can get on to color. Okay, now I'm going to put these brushes in some water so they don't dry out. And I'm going to pick up, let's say, a nice little round brush. This is a number 2, and it's a beautiful brush. I'm going to moisten it. Dip in the little medium here and go for a medium dark gray here. And go ahead and paint in the stem. Well, it's not showing that very well. Let's see. Go a little darker. And maybe I'll get some of the outside in there. Now I've noticed there's spots on the pears, so this brush is a perfect one to go in and add a few little spots to give a little bit of realism. Or it might look like it has measles. I don't think so though. Maybe some are a little lighter. So you want to just create various shapes and textures so it's not a glossy, solid item that looks like it's made out of plastic. And if you'll notice, pears have a lot of different shapes within shapes. See the dents and indentations that come in the pear? And you can get some of that and also texture by rolling your brush around a little bit on the side. And maybe considering where light might pick up on the pear, where it's sticking out the highest. Like on this fat part here. So I'm creating a little texture here. And then I'm going to go back in with a little black, a little gel medium. And see where this dark is? I want to go back in and create some of that contrast and drama with the very, very dark. And then it's a little flatter through here, but it's still bumpy. So I don't want to make it perfectly smooth. And blend it a little bit. Oh, let's get a little more dark in here. Ooh, lay down a little too much. That's okay. You know, if you lay down too much paint, if you picked up too much paint by accident, you can come in with a little paper towel and lift it. Oh, and that brings up another fun idea. Paint your painting with a paper towel. You know, a lot of people do their entire paintings in paper towels. It gives a whole nother effect. And a little lighter light. Kind of blend these around. Now there's different ways to paint. Some people paint very methodically and know exactly what they're doing, and others fly by the seat of their pants a little bit. I'm a little bit of a mixture of both. I like to know generally where I want to end up, but I like the surprises of letting it just lead you along and sometimes take you down roads you never even creatively dreamt of going. Okay, so for example, I want this to be a little loose edges and not too tight, so I'm going to redefine some of my edges a little bit with some lighter paint. Again, squish the paint around. I have such technical words like squish and mush, but you can mush your paint around and get the lights and mediums and darks that way, and also again not have it perfectly smooth. All right. Okay, I need to wash my brush off. I really don't want to go too long without cleaning the brush with acrylics because it can start to harden and dry, so you want to be careful of that. Okay. Now this isn't as great at using a round brush for this, so I'm going to show you, I really like a Filbert. This is a Dynasty number 4 black gold Filbert. As you can see, it kind of goes in a little curve there. I'm going to dampen that, pick up a little medium again, go back in with this, and it doesn't give the hard edge of the bright or the flat brush, but it gives a soft edge. Yet it's still flatter than a round brush, which is nice. Okay. Now, as you can see, I'm not worrying about this charcoal or any of that. That's neither here nor there. All right. Okay, now speaking of background, let's see, what shall we do? I said I like contrast, so we've got a lot of medium gray here. So I think I'm going to pick up straight up black for fun and games. Let's see what that looks like. Well, it really makes the pear stand out, doesn't it? Let's see if we can use a little medium. Pull that around. I'm trying to do this as fast as I can for y'all so that we can make this a brief video and that you can then have time to practice on your own. Wow, look at that contrast. That's nice. And then I want to pick up that black while I have it. Now this shadow compared to that sure doesn't look dark anymore, does it? So lots of things. It depends on the colors near it as to how they look. It's like a color bias. Things might look a certain color by themselves, and then you put another color or value next to it, and suddenly everything changes. So I'm gonna get a little more medium. As you can see, I can kind of smooth that hard edge out a little bit. And again, this is where you can have fun and get painterly. You could just build texture with the brush and make marks and have fun. I'm going to go back to the little round brush. And I see that the stem is getting lost. We need to come back in with some little marks. The stem is rather bumpy. And we can smooth that out. While I've got this on my brush, I'll go ahead. As you can see, there's some areas where the light hits. I'm going to quickly lay down some white. But then I'm going to grab that little Filbert again and just wipe the water off and go back in and smooth out that highlight a little bit. I always call this addition and subtraction. You lay something down, you add, you subtract. And it starts to create its own little language here. Okay. Smooth that out a little bit. I'm not worrying about every little detail at the moment. Dark. As you can see, there's some dark by the stem though. So I want to go back in and make sure that's in there so it reads. Again, smooth out the edges just a bit. As you can see, there's a bit of a highlight at the top of that pear. I'm going to hit that. And there's a little lightness over here, which helps differentiate it from the background. Read the stem. Not coming up. So, when there's something like that on there again, I'm going to come in, smooth that out just a little bit so it's not as too stark looking. Sometimes people just use their fingers. I'm wearing gloves, by the way. I just feel it's a safety thing, and it's easier to, clean your hands instead of having acrylic all over it. You can easily just peel off the gloves. And I reuse them again and again until they literally fall off my hands. Big fan of recycling. Okay, so I'm going to add a little more lighter colors over here. Get that little bit of light hitting there. And then over here. Okay. And that's a real white over there. So I'm going to clean my brush again, go back in with a little gel medium. Make sure that water's primarily off my brush. And then blend that a little bit. Again, it could be painterly blending, or it could be perfectly smooth. You can have edges that have no marks at all if you want. And one thing I do, I'm an acrylic and oil painter, so when I come back into this, it will be with oils later. But for this exercise, no, I'm not. I'm just going to do acrylics, but I want to show you that you can come back in with oils and get kind of a more finessing if you'd like. It's a different effect, and we'll talk about that in a different video. Okay, I want to soften this edge just a bit. Now I'm wondering, what should I do? I'm just playing at this point. I'd like to see how these speak to each other and add contrast. I'm not quite sure where I'm going with it, but let's just see what happens. I like trying different brush strokes, even getting the palette knife out, letting things drip. Just play with acrylics. Learn to see what they do. Don't be afraid. They're very forgiving medium. You can put the medium on top of that and sort of glaze over that a little bit. Let it look a little watery if you'd like. Okay, so I think I'll go back in with something dark again on this side. And then we'll let this dry and we'll add the color in acrylics. And like I said, if you just love your pear and you feel like playing with oil, you could even go with your oils and try that on top of there. What I don't suggest, you never put acrylic on top of oil, but you can do oil on top of acrylic. You have to be a little careful with that. Acrylics need to dry and cure completely before you add oils. A lot of people think, oh, it's dry to the touch within an hour and add oils, but really, that's not great. You should let it dry a few days, let any fumes leave and let it cure entirely, and then go in with your oils. Okay, I'm gonna get some of that gel medium again and smooth this out. But the whole point of art is it's just supposed to, well, there are a lot of reasons to make art, but one of the main reasons for me is just to relax and just enjoy this process. Now I'm going to take the brush, clean it again, wipe it off, go back to my gel medium, and run it down both the pear and the background at the same time. See how that creates a soft edge? Wipe that off again. If you can see that, I'm trying to soften the edge because I just don't want a harsh edge on the pear. I want it to be a tad soft and blurry even. Do you see that? I just softened it, whereas this has kind of got a hard edge. And this is already dried, so I can't do that. You have to do it while it's still wet. So if I were to take, for example, some grayish white here, add it to this side, and grab a little of the black and reapply to this edge. A little hard doing this sideways. I had a little white on my brush, which is fine. Darken that up. Okay, so I'm going to, while that's wet, clean off my brush, grab the gel medium, or matte medium I should say, and we'll pull it down over this edge and soften it so the two meld a little bit. Then I'm going to make sure my white that I lay down there softens a little bit too. I don't want a stark line. Just break that up a little bit. Now, see how much softer that is? Could go over it one more time. Maybe create some bumps while we're at it. And there, that's nice and soft. All right, so go back in with a little white there. Wipe that off. Smooth that edge. There we go. And again, just flipping that brush around, create some interest and movement. Back up in here. It's kind of fun to make shapes, unexpected shapes in your paintings. Like, you could take this black and sort of insinuate there's a window over here maybe. And I often like to just let things do this because it's kind of exciting just seeing brush strokes move around. That adds interest as well. So it keeps it loose. And let's go over here. Again, smoothing these shadows. If you'll notice, the shadow is very dark there and then lightens up as it moves away from the pear. So it gets a little lighter. And one thing, the best things about art is it really increases your power of observation. If it's looking at a pear sitting on a table that you've never studied the shadows that fall off a pear, well, you will now, you know? So it teaches you to slow down and look at everything. That is a good thing. Okay. Keep those brushes clean. Let's say you want to have a little white dripping for some reason, if that interests you. You can just lay down the color, a little water, create drip marks. Like that. So it's kind of fun. Go back in and add my shadows I just lost. It doesn't have to look just like your photo. I just want to indicate that it's sitting on this table. And to do that, you need to have a dark shape underneath it. All right, let's smooth that out. Grab a little medium. Smooth that out. My little spots have disappeared a little bit, so I'm going to go back in with my round brush and get a little bit of a darker gray tone. Just randomly add some of these spots back. Creating drip marks without wanting to. Look at that. Just had too much water on my brush. And I'm holding the painting upright, so everything's gonna fall. All right, I'm gonna get a little more straight up white. Again, I want a little bit more highlight here. And again, I'm just going to plunk it down. Titanium white is very opaque. There are different whites, like a zinc white. It's great for glazing. It's more of a transparent white. But if you really want to get a strong color on there and make a statement, it's titanium white. And find little areas where the light might be hitting it more than other areas. I'm going to randomly move this white around in between the little spots. Where the pear is, you know, it's just not an even tone all the way across it. It's a little mottled looking. And speaking of that, I'm going to take the brush and stipple outside the highlight area to help smooth that out and also create little pear freckles. Hope you can see this. Okay. So we can stipple to create texture. And I'm looking at how there are some areas that are lighter and then darker. It falls off into darkness. And that's just showing the bumpiness of the pear, which I like. Okay. I'd like to get one last thing done over here on this side, maybe do a little stippling so this doesn't look too smooth over here. And then we'll go to color and see what happens with that. Now let's say you lay some of this down and you want to soften it, your freckles. Get a paper towel. Just do a soft lift, that softens it. And I'm gonna go in with some, whoops, it's not dark enough. Some darker gray. It's still not dark enough. We'll get some black. And I love this about acrylics because you can quickly add some tones, values, colors, and they'll dry so fast that if you don't like it, you can quickly fix it. But that's also what can be the frustrating part about it, and that's why if you use acrylic retarders or the matte medium, something that helps slow that process down, it won't act exactly like oil, but it will help. And then don't forget, Golden has a line of open acrylics. They're called open. And you can put that on your palette and it will stay completely wet for about 4 hours. So they really dry slowly. And you can get a little bit more of an effect like oil with that. All right, let me smooth that a little bit. And for this exercise, we're going to be doing glazing with colors. So that's why I'm trying to get the values correct, as correct as I can, you know, here. And then if we need to fix anything, we can fix it. Now, if I want to measure the horizon line here, I can do that to make sure it's a little off, but let me see if that's about right. You can use a ruler, of course. That had a little acrylic on it. Wipe that off. Take a little gel medium. Soften that line. And I'm going to get one of the flat brushes or the Filbert. Get the medium. Pull it across there to hopefully soften that edge. All right, I'm not going to work this to death because we are going to get back in with color here in a minute. All right. Smooth that out a little bit. Kind of like those drip marks. May add a few more over here. Oh, it's doing it itself. Let's see what happens here. Or you can splatter a little bit. You could take a little color and splatter to get some unexpected textures and dots. You can dab those. You can start to build up a painting that way that has some visual, textural interest. And if you don't like what you've done, paint over it. See how quickly I can remove that? If I want to. So, one last thing. Have that shadow smooth out just a little bit. And let's just, for contrast's sake, add a little bit more white right there. In here. See how that helps that differentiate from the background and helps it pop. Again, I'm going to mush my brush a little bit, clean some of that paint off, and then push the paint that's on the canvas around. And I don't want that hard edge. So, and soften that edge. All right, I've looked at the clock and I really have to stop. I can futz with things forever, as most artists can, but I'm going to stop and just let this be what it is for now. We'll let this dry, and I'm going to come back in with the color. So I'm going to go put this under the fan. So go dry yours and come back and join me. Here's our dried canvas here. I put it out in the sun for about 20 minutes and that dried it really well. And I'm going to show you all something. I don't know if you've ever tried this, but this is one of my favorite glazing things when you're glazing over black and white. It's Golden's Fluid Acrylic Green Gold. And I'm just going to put a dab here, tiny bit. And let's see, let me take this Filbert Make sure it's really clean water. And what I like about the green gold is just a dab of the matte medium too. You don't have to, by the way. You could use water. Anyway, the point is you want it kind of thin. Now it looks like it's opaque, but it's not. When you start to move it around, you'll see it really glows. And you can still see all the freckles and everything beneath it, and it will even react on top of the darker areas, which is really neat. So I'm just going over the actual pear itself. Now I could stop here. If it's looking too dark or something, I can remove some of it right now just by wiping it off. But I really like it. I think it's really bright and glows. It makes the pear look like it's alive. So go around here. Now you can use the yellow as well, or a tiny bit with a tiny bit of phthalo blue and create a green. But there's just something about this green gold that really glows. That's all I can say. So sometimes I just like to go straight to it. There. It's almost like you don't need anything else. Now, let's go look at our color version of our pear. So the black and white. And that color shows it being much more yellow than green. So let's try adding a little yellow on top of the green gold. Let's see what happens. Just gonna add a little bit. Okay. So it's a little more opaque. If it's thinned out, and there's a lot of medium and water still on the pear itself, so I didn't add any more to it. I like mixing colors into other colors, so I'm gonna just pull that blue up into the pear. And we can pull some of the yellow, down in here, which will create some green. It's kind of pretty. And again, let's see, the stem is a little bit brown, so I'm going to take a little bit of this Quinacridone Magenta, tiny bit, and mix it with this little green gold. And just by mixing the red with the green, it almost creates a brownish tone. Got a little black to that. Let's see. I'm going to go back on with a little yellow, white, a little Quinacridone. It's kind of made a little bit of a putty color. And the putty color is very nice. It'll tone things down a little bit, so it's not quite so loud. And I like to go back in when I'm colorizing something and just make some marks, Because you see how the pear has little bruises and marks. You can kind of brush it up. Now this color has a lot of warm tones in it, even though it's green, but it's got reds and white. But if you apply it thinly, it'll still act as a glaze, even though it's a little on the opaque side, because it's got titanium white in it. But I like seeing those mixtures of colors there. And again, for unity's sake, I'm going to pull that same color around, this putty color. The blue will still show up, but it will have this other color over it. It helps tone it down a little bit. I'm going to clean my brush and I'm going to consider the background for a second. It would be interesting. I'm going to add a little Quinacridone red, a little Phthalo blue, and create a purple tone. Hopefully you can see that, a little purple tone. Let's see, I like to play with colors and just see what interests me. It doesn't matter, we can always cover it back over and see what a little bit of a purple does. That's kind of fun. And then take that purple, mix it with a little black. That's nice for the shadows too. So it just warms it up a little bit, so it's not just a stark black. It has some warm purple in it. Okay. I'm going to take a little gray and go back in here and dull this out a little bit. I like the blue, but it just seemed too strong, so I want to push it back with a little bit of gray. Now, what I feel is missing is this nice dark contrast here. So I'm going to get some black, put it over here by itself, get some matte medium, mix it with the black, and get it pretty watery, like a glaze. And I'm going to try to lay down some dark glazing on top of where I am. I'm going to come back in with a paper towel and tap that. I don't want it to be so opaque that it just looks like a big black blob. I want it to sort of mix in a little bit. So again, I'm going to take the edges with a different brush, smooth it out. Yeah, that's helping with the contrast there. And I could take, let me get a little more yellow. Oh, there's plenty there. A little yellow with a little bit of this black. Did you know yellow and black makes green? It's really neat. And we'll smooth out these edges a little bit. And again, if you want to be loose, come back in with some big brushstroke marks, or you could do small ones, whatever you want to do. Or if you want to really finesse it and make it perfectly like a realistic pear, that's your prerogative too. Okay, now if you wanted to get a little more opaque, instead of just glazing, let me add a little more yellow. You could do that. Let me add a little more blue. And let's say, I'm going to take my Filbert And right up in here, I'm going to take a little yellow, over here in a clean spot, a little white. And right up in here, I want to do a little more opaque to create more light concentration up here. See how that makes it look quite a bit brighter? And same here. There, now the light is much brighter on this side of the pear. And I want to get a little brighter as we move around here too. So to do that, I just need to have a little opacity, and you get that by adding a touch of titanium white too. And right in here, where the pear has its bumps and where the light catches it, I just want to gently, and this is very thin, as you can see, it's a very thin build. I'm not putting it on thickly. It's barely on my brush. Oops. I ran out of clean paper towels. Sorry about that. Just make do. Okay, so I'm gonna add a little white, a little yellow again, maybe a touch of matte medium. Let me see where else I feel I could use some more lighter glazing. Now the only bad part about this is that there's an opacity to it and it's covering up all those great freckles I made. But you can always go back in and re-add those. But I just wanted to show you there's straight up glazing where you just add one color. You saw what that looked like. And then there's starting to get opacity, kind of a combo of glazing and opaque paints that you can start building up again. Let's see, that's starting to look a little more pear-like. And I like the looseness of these brush strokes. I want to keep it loose. There we go. And let's take a little blue, a little white, touch of gray. So I'm making a little bit of a blue-gray here. A little more contrast to our table, a little more interest. See, I love just laying down a color like that and having it just be what it is. You can see the whole brush stroke. Just let it be loose. And then we have all these specks on here. It's kind of interesting. You could go back in with some of that purple. One way to do specks is just to tap your brush. So this is like a purpley blue color. And it went right over the pear too. Or you could block the pear and have it just go in the background. And as acrylic dries, it always gets a touch darker. So you can see all those glazing I did, it's already soaked in and it's kind of darker now. So I'm gonna go back with a little white, touch of yellow. Oh, wait a minute, I had gray in my brush, so I'm getting rid of that. I'm gonna grab this paper towel. Better. All right, so I'm going to get a little white, titanium white, a little bit of that yellow. I'm going to go back in and just lay this down flat for a second. It's amazing how much it dries and soaks in. Because I want to have that contrast. And you can wiggle your brush around to soften those edges, make it segue a little bit into the next colors. So this is just a moist brush to soften the edges. I don't want to go in the middle because that'll just wipe that paint off again. But I like all these marks I'm making with the brush. That's kind of fun. And then if you want to just really add that one dab of highlight, you could just add straight up paint if you wanted to. Straight up white, I mean. And get the round brush. Soften that edge just a hair. And I want to get a little bit of the yellow and come up here and add a few more highlights on the stem. Because the stem would be picking up light too. Again, a few more light freckles. They could be light, they could be dark. Just anything to create, you know, the mottling. There we go. Okay, I think I'm going to stop there for now. Like I said, I could do this forever because I enjoy it. I could just paint, and when do you know to stop? I don't know. People always ask that. I think it's a gut instinct, just when you're done. This is a gray with a little green in it. Just add a little more modeling. The modeling also creates a little unity amongst the colors. Kind of pulls your eye around. And it's a little on the lighter side where that light is hitting over here. But I don't want it to be a straight line, so I'm just going to model it just a little here. And now, when do you sign it? That's up to you. I don't think I'm finished with this. I think there are a lot more things I want to do with it. I'm going to think on it. I like to set something down and look at it for about a day or two, turn it against the wall, then come back around, and then I'll see, oh yeah, I want to do that. I'm just going to add a few marks here for the little bruises or whatever they are that are on pears. Make it look a little more lifelike. And that's it for now. Okay. Doesn't look just like that. It's my version. But I do see one other thing real quick. I wouldn't mind not making these quite the same level. I'd like to add a little more height on this side. Just to make it a little more interesting. Yeah, I like that. And then if you want to be real loosey-goosey, you can come back in and kind of add lines that look like you're drawing it for the first time, you know? Really show the artist's hand at work. And that's why these loose brush strokes to me are interesting, because they just show that an artist created this. It's not computer generated, it's by hand. Okay, I'm gonna stop for now. Thank you for watching, and please send me a picture of your pears. I'd love to see what you did. Oh, you can always go back in with fine charcoal too. And you could spray it with a little fixative if you wanted to, and create other lines. You can mush it in there a little bit. Create, you know, really dark outlines if you need to. So that's fun too. All right, guys, I could futz forever. I'm gonna stop. There you go. I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know what you think. Email me, Rachael@rachaelmccampbell.com, or comment. And I hope you'll subscribe for future videos. Thank you.